The 5 components of permanent change. Now, we're going to take a little bit of time on this one because I have a lot of material that I want to share with you. As a general rule, humans would rather be ruined, crushed, belittled, tortured, or abused rather than change, or even be asked to change for that matter. In fact, most of us are only willing to call in to ourselves 5%, and call into question 5% of our present knowledge at any given point in time. That's a quote by Ken Wilber. The term "I know" is ubiquitous in conversation and usually expressed by those who prefer the status quo to the energy and effort required to discover something they don't know. Richard Rohr explained that life is divided into 2 parts, which we've covered, first half and second half. Change means you cannot traverse the second half of life using your first half of life tools. You need this new toolkit. Too many couples, teams, and organizations are stuck functioning in their relationships at an adolescent maturity level, stumped in their growth because they're stuck in familiar. They fear the idea of change. Here's the 5 core competencies of emotional intelligence as a reminder. Self-awareness, be aware of what's going on. Regulation, you regulate a different behavior. Lifelong learner, empathy, and interpersonal relationships. So why is change so daggone hard? Here's a reminder of the upstairs and downstairs brain. When we believe who we are on a false self, that belief drives the behavior. This entire process is how do we unstick ourselves from this false narratives and move into a different pathway, because we're stuck in that really deep, narrow neural pathway called habits, because we've got a false narrative stemming from things that happened to us early in our lives. So we keep thinking about yesterday, stressing out. Projecting about what's going to happen tomorrow, anxiety. And not living in today, acceptance. So here are 3 challenges that hinder our ability to change. Number 1, we discount the mechanism of integration. In other words, integrating upstairs and downstairs brain, because we're in resistance, because it's outside of our familiar. Oftentimes people think that they're really open to change, but in fact they're so resistant to said change. We actually fear the subconscious, our emotions, people stuck in their head, unconsciously incompetent, like an engineer mindset. They get stuck in the familiar versus they're safe, and it's challenging to separate pain from suffering. So we live in that constant state of suffering instead of accepting that pain is a teacher and suffering removes learning. All right, so now let's get into the 5 components. Number 1, authentic self. Number 2, awareness. Number 3, acceptance. Number 4, emotional intelligence. And number 5, deliberate practice. To number 1. Now we've covered, or you'll get this in much more detail than right now, but all healing begins with you. You have to know who you are. Embrace the resolution that this is not about anybody but you. The goal is to find your identity. Who are you? The identity circle basically explains that from an inside-out approach, you discover who you are, your behavior follows that belief structure, that identity, and then the results follow that. It doesn't do any good to set goals or expectations if you don't have an identity that supports the behavior, that supports the process. So outside in, remember, is motivational, very short shelf life. The key here is to start with the statement, what if? What if I am healthy? What if I am strong? What if I do trust myself? What if I do respect myself? Because you're now bypassing the critical faculty by asking the what if question. Your authentic self is how God sees you. It's how I want to believe about myself. Imagine just for a second, if you want to just close your eyes. If you're driving, don't do this. But if you just would just take a minute and imagine, what if you truly believed I am of worth? My relationships were based on mutual trust and respect, and I own my happiness, joy, and well-being. What would today be like? What would tomorrow be like? What would your relationships be like? What would it be like with your spouse or your children? That's what it's all about. because too often we get stuck in these 8 false narratives. And these narratives really own us. They hijack our happiness. They take away our ability to be the true person that we really are. Because if we believe those, we behave according to those. Number 2, self-awareness. This is the first step, the foundational step in the 5 components of permanent change. Recognizing and understanding who you are and what causes who you are. How do you react and why do you act that way? What impact do they have on others, and what is the world's role in all of this? Number 3 is acceptance. Acceptance is that ability to channel energy through or around the body without it being stuck inside of you or collecting like a reservoir. It is civility with boundaries without getting flooded or giving away your energy to the different things that are happening around you. The bully walks in the room, you give him his energy. You're being nice, so you always want to help everyone else, but the last person you ever care for is yourself. And acceptance is the notion that trying to get out of your pain amplifies it. When you run from pain, it only gets bigger. What you resist persists. Accepting is recognizing that pain, maladaptive behavior, and evil exist. Number 4, emotional intelligence. It is the ability to identify, assess, and control your own emotions, and be aware of the emotions of others. And there's 3 things, and we've covered, and you'll get this in more detail. You design an environment, a foxhole that makes good decisions for you. So you can learn to focus so you can lose focus. So when you go to make a decision about, what time do I go to bed tonight? You've already made the decision. The foxhole's making the decision for you. You don't need to sweat staying up with friends or being hijacked by playing a video game. Habit stack, healthy habits. You're going to take a habit you want to develop, stick it on a benign habit, and ultimately vacuum out negative influences. Most people are just shocked by how much negativity they permit themselves to have. Oh, I just don't do good at that. I'm no good at that. I'm stupid. I can't remember names. This constant barrage of negative comments. You need to know that when you say something negative, your downstairs brain feels it. And it goes, oh man, I can feel that. The upstairs brain just doesn't like himself right now. Then it starts going through this machinations. For me, it's my stomach. Then my head's going, wow, the stomach's all messed up. That must mean something's wrong. And then it compounds the severity of the negativity. And now we're in this ugly loop. And that's what depression's all about. That's what anxiety is all about. We get stuck in these narratives that aren't true. Remember the environment we talked about. The world would have you believe that people are fragile, that you can use emotions to do reasoning, and that it's always us versus them. They'll have you believe that taking offense is honorable and that you can call people out. Families of origin based upon chaos or rigidity. Traditions of seeking the 3 A's. All of these come from your food. Family of origin dysfunctions. That's what happens when we come out of our first half of life without the skills necessary to move into the second half of life. This last one is what I'm suggesting will help you move to a second half of life lifestyle by developing the tools necessary to thrive in life, to connect with self, so you connect with God, so you connect with others. Rules of engagement, which will be covered in detail. Conditions and satisfaction, same. How to self-advocate. Cover yourself first. Remember priorities. You, God, spouse, children, work, community. Filling out an awareness journal, which we'll go into in detail, and learning how to deliberate practice. And a deliberate practice, that's number 5, is understanding that what you focus on and measure and strive to improve 1% per day will compound. You only need a little bit per day. Be mindful of what's going on. What I'm hoping you're seeing here is how all this stuff is connecting with each other. Being mindful or aware of who you are, being mindful of your identity, setting your goals off the identity instead of the reverse order, and then keeping an awareness journal. What did you learn today? What did you notice today? How did you take care of yourself today? And what are you grateful for today? Those are the 5 components of permanent change. Each one will get unzipped a little bit and have been in the various models or modules that we've covered here. So thanks for listening.